Imagine for a second that you wake up tomorrow morning, you grab your phone off the nightstand, and you decide you're entirely done with your bank.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And you're not doing anything illegal. You're not, trying to hide from the tax man or anything like that. You've just found a way to completely bypass the legacy global financial system.
Like just entirely stepping outside of it.
Exactly. You want to send, say, $5,000 to a vendor across the world, and you do it in 3 seconds flat.
Right.
There are no $20 wire transfer fees. There's no absurd foreign exchange margins eating into your money, and absolutely zero banking hours to worry about. It's literally just you, your digital wallet, and a screen.
I mean, that sounds like the ultimate dream of financial independence, really.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about truly frictionless, borderless money that just operates at the speed of the internet.
Exactly that. But let's flip the chessboard for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine you are the finance minister of a developing country, or maybe the chairperson of a central bank.
Yeah. Okay. Stressful job.
Right. And millions of your citizens are waking up and making that exact same decision at the exact same time.
Oh, yeah. That changes things.
Suddenly, the local currency you are tasked with managing is just losing relevance. Your ability to control inflation is evaporating right before your eyes.
Because no one is using your money anymore.
Exactly. And worse, a private tech company based in, I don't know, Silicon Valley or the British Virgin Islands is effectively issuing the money your population is using to buy their daily groceries.
Wow. Yeah, so what looks like ultimate financial freedom for the individual user is actually an absolute geopolitical nightmare for the state.
Right. It's terrifying for them.
It is the literal definition of a systemic shock.
Yeah.
Because, this isn't just about a cool new finance app or some passing crypto trend. What we're really talking about is a battle for 21st century sovereignty. I mean, who gets to issue and control the money?
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to our deep dive into the source material. Today, our mission is to cut through the massive information overload surrounding a really fascinating stack of documents we've titled The War for Digital Money.
It's a great title for it.
Right. We are going to figure out exactly why governments around the world, from Washington to Brussels to Bogota, are suddenly panicking over and just rushing to regulate digital assets known as stablecoins.
Yeah, and we aren't here to just read you a textbook.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We want to extract the vital signal from the noise, and really look at the underlying mechanics of this huge global financial shift.
And to really grasp why governments are sweating over this so much, we first have to understand what the asset actually is on a purely mechanical level. Because not all cryptocurrency is created equal.
Yeah, let's strip away all the heavy jargon. When we say stablecoin, what are we actually talking about here?
Right, so essentially it is a cryptocurrency designed to maintain a fixed value.
Unlike Bitcoin.
Exactly. Unlike Bitcoin, if you look at something like Bitcoin, it might surge 20% one week on a rumor and then crash 30% the next week just because of a tweet.
Which means you can't really price a cup of coffee with it.
No, you'd be constantly changing the menu. A stablecoin is completely different. It is almost always pegged directly to a traditional fiat currency, specifically the US dollar.
Okay.
The heavyweights in this space are assets like Tether, which is known as USDT, or Circle's USDC. If you have one USDT in your digital wallet, it is supposed to be worth exactly one physical US dollar. Always.
And the scale of this is just mind-bending. I mean, by the first quarter of 2025, our sources note that stablecoins made up a staggering 30% of all crypto transaction volume globally.
30%, that's huge.
It is. And over 90% of all fiat-backed stablecoins in circulation are pegged specifically to the US dollar.
That scale is so crucial to wrap your head around. This is no longer some fringe experiment for internet forums or tech enthusiasts. It has genuinely become foundational global financial infrastructure. And to see why it's growing at such a breakneck pace, you really have to look outside the borders of the United States or Western Europe.
Right. The sources are really clear about that.
Yeah. For people living in countries like Colombia, Mexico, or Nigeria, a stablecoin is not some speculative day trading asset. It is a vital economic lifeline.
The sources actually highlight that using stablecoins can save families up to 20% on international remittance fees.
20%?
Yeah, 20%. That is a massive chunk of change for someone sending money back home to their family.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the friction of the legacy system.
Yeah.
Western Union or traditional bank wires, they take days. They require all this physical infrastructure, and they take a massive cut of your money.
Right.
Stablecoins just offer this highly efficient, really cheap way to receive value. But, and this is key, The companies issuing these digital dollars aren't charities. They are incredibly profitable.
Which actually brings up a question I had while reading the research. If I give a company like Tether one real dollar and they just give me one digital dollar back, how on earth are they making billions in profit? They aren't charging me massive fees to hold it.
Ah, okay. That is where the concept of yield comes in, and it's basically the secret engine of this entire industry.
Okay, lay it on me.
So when you hand them your physical dollar, they don't just stuff it under a digital mattress. They take those billions of user deposits and they buy highly secure interest-bearing assets, primarily short-term U.S. Treasury bills.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the U.S. government pays them, say, 4 or 5% interest on those billions of dollars, and the stablecoin issuer just keeps that profit. The user just gets their one-to-one digital dollar.
So here is an analogy that I think really helps clarify this underlying mechanic and also the underlying risk.
Let's hear it.
Think of stablecoins like digital casino chips. You walk into a casino, you hand the cashier a real physical $100 bill, and they give you a stack of plastic chips in return. And you use those chips to play the games seamlessly, to trade with others at the table, all because you completely trust that when you are done, you can walk back to the cage, hand them the chips, and they will give you your real $100 back.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, the casino is taking your real cash out back and investing it to make a profit for themselves.
Yeah, that is a brilliant way to visualize the peg and the whole business model.
But the tension is this. What happens if that casino isn't regulated? What if the casino takes your $100, makes a bad bet out back, and when you go to the cage, they don't actually have the dollars in the vault to buy back the chips they just handed out?
And that precise fear leads us directly to the trigger moment for global regulators. Because what's fascinating here is that the modern regulatory race wasn't actually sparked by Tether or Circle getting too big.
Really?
No, it was sparked by a project that ultimately never even launched.
Oh, you mean the Facebook thing?
It's exactly. In 2019, Mark Zuckerberg announced that Facebook, which is now Meta, obviously, was going to launch its own global digital currency. It was originally called Libra, and then later rebranded to Diem.
Wow, that feels like a lifetime ago. But reading the sources, the panic that announcement caused was just palpable. I mean, you had a private tech monopoly proposing a currency that could instantly be embedded into a platform with 3 billion users.
It terrified central banks and the G7, like genuinely terrified them.
I can imagine.
Imagine Facebook overnight becoming the largest central bank on the planet. The idea that a private company could just instantly mint a currency used by half the global population. It forced sovereign states to completely accelerate their own digital currency plans.
All right, they had to wake up.
Yeah. Libra was eventually crushed by intense regulatory pressure and all those congressional hearings by 2022, but the genie was already out of the bottle. It inadvertently birthed the frantic, defensive regulatory environment we are living in right now.
Because losing control of the money supply strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a nation. I mean, if we look at the macroeconomics of this, the first major fear for governments is the outright loss of monetary sovereignty.
Absolutely.
For centuries, the defining feature of a sovereign nation has been the ability to issue its own currency.
It's the ultimate lever of power. That power allows a central bank to fix interest rates, control the money supply, and crucially intervene during an economic crisis by printing money or pulling it out of circulation to stabilize their domestic economy.
But if a population just collectively decides to abandon the local currency, like if everyone starts conducting all their business, buying houses, selling goods, saving for retirement in digital dollars managed by a private company, those central bank levers suddenly disconnect.
They're pulling levers that aren't attached to anything.
Right. They can no longer control inflation because literally no one is using their money.
And we are seeing this play out in real time right now.
Yeah.
The sources point to Argentina as a prime example.
Oh, yeah. The Argentina case study is wild.
It really is. Historically plagued by hyperinflation and strict government currency controls, Argentine citizens are heavily using USDT and USDC to dodge those restrictions. They are essentially rejecting the Argentine peso and embracing the digital dollar on a massive scale.
It's just a grassroots, bottom-up digital dollarization.
Exactly. And from the perspective of the Argentine central bank, that is a profound loss of control.
But losing control of interest rates is really only half the nightmare. The real terror for central banks, according to the research, is what happens if this private, unregulated system suddenly breaks down.
Right, the systemic risk.
Exactly. The Bank for International Settlements, or the BIS, has issued severe warnings about what they call the stablecoin run. They argue that stablecoins lack the uniqueness, elasticity, and integrity of real sovereign money.
And sadly, they have historical precedent to back up that exact fear.
Right. Because in 2022, we saw this happen with an algorithmic stablecoin called Terra USD. It completely collapsed, wiping out $40 billion in a matter of
It
days.
vanished.
But I want to pause here for a second because algorithmic stablecoin is a pretty dense term. If a fiat-backed stablecoin is a casino chip backed by a dollar in a vault, how does an algorithm act as a stablecoin?
Ah, yeah, it's a completely different and far riskier beast. An algorithmic stablecoin doesn't have a vault full of real dollars backing it.
No vault at all.
None. Instead, it relies on complex computer code, a smart contract. The code is designed to automatically print and burn a secondary, sister cryptocurrency
Yeah.
to constantly balance the supply and demand, theoretically keeping the price of the stablecoin at exactly $1.
So it's essentially a robot acting as an automated central bank, trying to maintain a peg, basically out of thin air through financial engineering.
Precisely. And the problem is that financial engineering works beautifully, right up until panic sets in.
Because people are unpredictable.
Right. When users lose confidence and all rush for the exit at once, the algorithm just can't print enough of the sister coin to maintain the peg. The code enters a death spiral, and the value just drops straight to zero.
Which brings up a really terrifying thought. If a traditional bank run happens, like we saw in the 1930s, or even recently with Silicon Valley Bank, you have people physically lining up around the block at a brick-and-mortar branch. Or at least you're dealing with banking hours.
Yeah, there's friction.
It gives the bank time to react, to literally lock the glass doors or to call the central bank for an emergency bailout. But a digital bank run, wouldn't that happen at the speed of light?
That is precisely the systemic risk regulators are having nice sweats over. The sheer velocity of crypto is actually its greatest vulnerability.
Wow.
I mean, how could any regulator possibly step in to stop a panic that happens via smartphone, where billions of dollars can be withdrawn and moved across the globe in literal seconds?
You can't. There are no physical doors to lock.
You really can't. If a massive player like Tether, which manages hundreds of billions in assets, suffers a sudden crisis of confidence, the contagion would be instantaneous.
It would spread everywhere.
Everywhere. It would bleed into the traditional financial system because Tether would have to fire sale billions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bills just to pay back their users. This is exactly why regulators are suddenly demanding that these digital casinos prove they have massive, fully audited reserves backing every single chip and overseen by traditional agencies.
Okay, so if local currencies are being threatened by these fast-moving digital dollars, how is the United States, the actual owner of the physical dollar, reacting to this global shift? Because this is where the geopolitics gets incredibly tense.
Oh, it really does.
And actually, before we go further, I should just say to you, the listener, our sources cover some recent political legislation and figures here, specifically the Trump administration and actions by the U.S. Congress.
Right. We need to be clear about that.
Yeah, we want to be absolutely clear that we are impartially reporting on the factual content provided in the source material. We are not taking sides, nor are we endorsing the viewpoints or actions of any political figures or parties mentioned. Our goal is strictly to convey the ideas contained in the original text.
It's an important distinction because the legislative moves detailed here are highly consequential to the global power dynamic, regardless of your politics.
Right. So let's look at the U.S. strategy as outlined in the text, the Genius Act. This was passed by the House of Representatives with a vote of 308 to 122 on July 17, 2025. And it was signed into law the very next day on July 18, 2025.
Moving fast.
Very fast. It is a landmark piece of federal crypto legislation. It explicitly requires one-to-one reserves for stablecoins. But mechanically, the biggest shift is jurisdictional. It takes oversight away from the SEC and the CFTC and hands it directly to traditional banking regulators like the FDIC, the OCC, and the Federal Reserve.
This is a massive shift in how the U.S. views the asset. I mean, think about it. The SEC regulates securities, things you invest in, hoping the price goes up, like stocks.
Right.
The FDIC and the Federal Reserve, they regulate the actual plumbing of money, the dollars you use to buy a sandwich or pay rent. So by shifting oversight to banking regulators, the U.S. government is officially recognizing stablecoins as money.
Which feels like a total validation of the technology.
It is. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a profound geopolitical strategy. The U.S. government realized something crucial here. Instead of fighting stablecoins or trying to crush them like they did with Facebook's Libra, they could domesticate them.
Domesticate them. Wow. So by forcing entities like Tether, Circle, and even traditional players exploring the space into this strictly regulated, Federal Reserve monitored framework, the U.S. is essentially deputizing them.
Exactly. These private companies and the blockchains they run on have now become the new regulated custodians of the digital dollar empire.
That's wild.
And the U.S. is rushing to cement this because they are facing a direct, coordinated threat from abroad. At the exact same time the Genius Act is being passed, the BRICS nations, specifically China, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Thailand, are actively developing a project called mBridge.
The sources highlight mBridge as a direct countermove to dollar dominance. What does that actually look like in practice?
Think of mBridge as a private digital highway built exclusively for central banks. Right now, if the UAE wants to trade with China, the transaction often has to be routed through the US dollar and traditional messaging systems like SWIFT.
Which gives the U.S. a lot of power.
Immense visibility and sanction power. But mBridge uses a bespoke blockchain to allow these central banks to trade their own sovereign digital currencies directly with each other. It settles instantly, and it entirely bypasses the US dollar and the legacy Western financial system.
So the U.S. regulating stablecoins isn't just about making sure consumer funds are safe. It's a strategic, offensive move. It's about ensuring the dollar remains the dominant, most liquid, easiest to use currency in the digital age, fighting off alternatives like the digital Yuan or this mBridge system.
Exactly.
But, here's where it gets really interesting. I have to push back on this whole U.S. strategy for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If the United States is taking these wildly innovative stablecoin issuers and forcing them to act exactly like heavily regulated traditional banks, putting them under the thumb of the FDIC and the Federal Reserve, aren't they just rebuilding the exact same legacy banking system that cryptocurrency was originally invented to escape?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It feels like the whole cypherpunk revolution just got absorbed by the establishment in a suit and tie.
It's incredibly ironic, isn't it? The anarchic, borderless technology that was literally designed to bypass the state is being hammered into the shape of a traditional bank, precisely because the state cannot tolerate the alternative.
Right.
The underlying blockchain tech remains, sure, but the compliance wrapper is just pure Wall Street now.
Which brings us to the dark side of this technology. Because regulating these digital dollars might sound like a great victory for U.S. geopolitics, but the sources bring up massive unresolved issues regarding who is actually running these networks, who is using them, and who is watching your every move.
And that leads us straight into the paradox of financial crime on the blockchain.
Yeah. The text highlights a staggering statistic. It notes that an estimated 99% of stablecoin activity is entirely legal. Everyday commerce, trading, remittances.
Sounds great so far.
Right. But then, in the first quarter of 2025, stablecoins accounted for 60% of all illicit crypto transaction volume. They have become the preferred vehicle for ransomware hackers, fraud rings, and terror financing.
It's a huge problem.
The sources mention that the T3 Financial Crime Unit seized over $200 million linked to criminal activity in 2025 alone. Why are criminals using something that leaves a permanent public record on a blockchain?
Because of the liquidity and the speed. Criminals don't want volatile Bitcoin where the value drops overnight. Right. They want dollars they can instantly move across 20 different wallets in 3 seconds, before law enforcement could even get the paperwork to freeze the asset.
And that scale of illicit use provides governments with all the justification they need for massive regulatory surveillance. But there is another type of unchecked power at play here too, and that is asymmetric corporate power. Right now, a company like Tether controls more liquidity than many medium-sized central banks.
You really have to let the gravity of that sink in. We are looking at the potential privatization of monetary policy.
It sounds like these large stablecoin issuers aren't just tech companies anymore. They are acting like shadow nation states. They literally hold more U.S. government debt than some actual countries, but they operate entirely without borders, without elections, and without any real democratic accountability.
Just a few guys at a table.
Right. A handful of executives in a boardroom are making decisions that ripple through the entire global economy.
Which is exactly why this regulatory clampdown isn't just happening in the U.S., it's global. And it is causing massive friction regarding privacy. Well, for example, the European Union's MiCA regulation, which was fully applied in 2025, alongside their CIRF framework, is enforcing massive traceability. Essentially, the EU wants every single transaction monitored.
Wow.
And in Latin America, Colombia has implemented mandatory reporting for stablecoin transactions just to fight tax evasion.
So we're watching a direct, high-speed collision between the foundational ethos of crypto, which promised privacy, anonymity, and freedom from government snooping, and the state's demand for total surveillance and tax compliance.
And this transition isn't exactly a smooth, impartial process either. The regulatory landscape is heavily complicated by stark conflicts of interest.
Right, the lobbying.
Exactly. For instance, the source material points out that U.S. legislation was heavily delayed by intense lobbying and debates over who gets to keep that lucrative yield we talked about earlier.
Everyone wants a piece of the pie.
Exactly. Furthermore, the text explicitly notes ethical provisions regarding the Trump family's own cryptocurrency activities. Specifically, it names the USD1 stablecoin project.
Oh.
Yeah, the text describes it as an unresolved elephant in the room regarding how truly impartial regulation can be achieved when political figures or their families have direct, profitable stakes in the ecosystem they are supposedly regulating.
So what does this all mean? We've covered a massive amount of ground here today, from Facebook's failed Libra waking up the regulators, to the Genius Act deputizing crypto companies, to the mechanics of an algorithmic death spiral.
It's a lot to take in. But when you synthesize all the source material, it really boils down to a fundamental philosophical dilemma. We are watching a real-time battle between two competing visions of the future of money.
Which are?
On one side, you have the demand for freedom and financial inclusion, the desire for fast, cheap, universally accessible money that entirely bypasses legacy gatekeepers.
And the other side?
On the other side, you have the demand for control and stability, the state's absolute mandate to prevent financial crime, stop devastating economic collapses, and rein in unchecked corporate monopolies.
And according to the sources, neither side is going to win outright.
No. The most likely future outlined in the text is one of forced coexistence. We will likely see states issuing their own central bank digital currencies, operating right alongside heavily regulated, domesticated stablecoins issued by private companies.
Which brings this right back to you, the listener, because this isn't just abstract economic theory meant for a whiteboard. Whether you are sending money to family overseas, making investments, or eventually just buying your morning coffee, the very definition of the money in your pocket is being rewritten right now.
It's happening as we speak.
Tech giants and central banks are currently arm wrestling over the underlying code of global finance. Your financial privacy, your freedom to transact, and your exposure to digital surveillance are directly on the line in this tug of war.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building directly on the ultimate challenge presented in the sources.
Let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about how strict these new regulations are, requiring massive compliance departments, expensive regulatory licenses, and constantly audited one-to-one reserves.
Right, millions in overhead.
Exactly. So consider this. If these heavy regulations successfully wipe out all the small, innovative crypto startups because they simply cannot afford the millions of dollars in legal and compliance costs, we might inadvertently be handing total control of the future of digital money to a tiny oligopoly of massive traditional corporations.
The JP Morgans and tech monopolies of the world.
Exactly. This raises an important question. Is the ultimate price for making digital money safe simply locking the door on the exact decentralized financial inclusion it promised to create in the first place?
It's a heavy, deeply consequential question. The next time you wake up, grab your phone off the nightstand and check your digital wallet. You might want to ask yourself, who actually holds keys to the cage? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the source material.